Yo guys, what is going on? I'm back from my lengthy hiatus, so rejoice, I guess. I feel like it's been a year since I made my last commentary video, and needless to say, this video was long overdue, which is the case with a lot of my videos. I think I should have made this about 5 months ago, but I was somewhat indisposed, and, I had some more pressing matters to deal with, like college. But, regardless, I'm really eager to discuss today's topic, which is Vergil's Hypothetical Storm Moveset. Now, as some of you may already know, I have a playlist on this channel titled Hypothetical Storm Movesets, where I basically make Storm Movesets for various video game characters. Naruto Shippuden Ultimate Ninja Storm 4, the game I'm crazy about and that I have a penchant for spamming on this channel. Yeah, that game. I take characters from various video games, mostly action games or, hack and slash games like DMC, Prototype, Metal Gear Rising, Nier Automata, and I select the characters that I deem most compatible with Storm's mechanics, and then I make what I feel would be their moveset if they were playable in Storm. And, I usually basically, I try to exhaust every avenue and do everything to the best of my ability to create the coolest looking movesets while integrating most, if not all, of the moves that these characters have at their disposal. But you're gonna have to pardon me for not exactly following the Storm formula. I don't strictly adhere to the Storm 4 formula in that I frequently give my characters, a multitude of combos, three combos in Storm? Come on, bro, that's rookie numbers. I give my characters 2 side combos and up to 4 air combos sometimes, and, 2 tilts, and I don't really give a rat's ass. It may look easy, but I really put every ounce of my being into this. I spend a disproportionate amount of time, basically contemplating these movesets for hours on end, and, recreating and showcasing them in-game, coming up with the names for the moves, and, etc. And honestly, it's really fun to me. It's not that aggravating, it's right up my alley, it's my domain, so it's not really all, blood, sweat, and tears. So, I made a commentary video analyzing Dante's Storm moveset, basically analyzing his moveset in minute detail, and I basically discussed the thought process and how I came up with these moves, and, these videos basically, in the most general terms, they basically serve to point out the similarities between, certain moves in Storm and certain moves in DMC5, in this case. Personally, I feel like there's a lot of bias on my end towards Dante. If you look at all my Hypothetical Storm Musa videos, I think you'll find it conspicuous how Dante is the only one with a lot of mix-ups and 2 awakenings and all these cinematic screenshots. And while it is in part because DMC5 has Photo Mode and these other games don't, I also feel like I was very partial to Dante in particular because, he was the first Hypothetical Storm moveset that I made, so it was like this labor of love before I actually started to dabble in this whole thing more religiously. Now, I also feel like he set the bar too high with Dante, his moveset, since there was a lot to work with, and I was adamant about including almost all of his moves, since he has, the sword, the nunchucks, the bike, and the whole 9 yards. And, it isn't really all that surprising. So when Vergil got announced, and in light of DMC5 Special Edition, I decided to step my game up, and I would stop at nothing until I made some next level shit. But, I just had to make sure I didn't go overboard. And you can see that Vergil is no slouch himself. If anything, I'd even argue that he might just have a slightly better moveset than Dante. And while that might be a stretch, he can certainly measure up to Dante in terms of both quantity and quality. So, I had a lot of fun making Vergil's moveset. I even included a character icon and all sorts of things switch quotes, defeat quotes, awakening quotes, which I didn't do for Dante. And, if need be, I'll make an updated version of Dante's moveset with all these switch quotes, defeat quotes included. Now, I don't think I need to say that Dante's gameplay reflects his personality and his devil-may-care attitude, whereas Vergil's gameplay reflects his own personality, which is a lot more tacit and, serious. And, despite being 2 sides of the same coin, Vergil and Dante are basically polar opposites at the end of the day, so, they're never on the same page. So it goes without saying that Vergil's gameplay is going to be in stark contrast to Dante's. Dante has a sword, his nunchucks, his Sunset's Cone, a fire bow staff, a hat, a bike, gauntlets, greaves, and everything but the kitchen sink. Whereas Vergil utilizes his Yamato, his Beowulf, and his Mirage Edge in addition to his Summoned Swords, or as they're called now, Mirage Blades. I'm gonna keep it 100. I didn't really want to make a Moveset for DMC4 Vergil because he was low-key too basic, and, you know, DMC5 Special Edition wasn't even on the horizon at the time, and that was what ultimately dashed my hopes about making a hypothetical Storm Moveset for Vergil at all. Now, you know, I'm not trying to throw shade at DMC4 Vergil, but I mean, you know, I was kind of thrown off by how his DMC4 moveset really fell short. Like, it feels kind of half-baked. Like, it's a very streamlined version of DMC4's combat, and, you know, that whole thing somewhat weakened my resolve about making a moveset for him. And, you know, that might beg the question, like, so wait, what's the difference between DMC4 and DMC5 Vergil? I mean, they're practically the same, but I don't really agree with that. With DMC5 Vergil, I really hit the jackpot, no pun intended. But, you know, DMC5 SC was ultimately what triggered this video. It was like the catalyst for this video. Because, you know, Vergil is just a lean, mean fight machine. And, you know, like, his Sin Double Trigger gives him new combo finishers for almost every move, especially the Beowulf. His Doppelganger is a really good addition. His 3 ultimates also give him more depth. And, you know, upon seeing Vergil's refurbished DMC5 moveset, I knew that I could make a Storm moveset for him with relative ease. And, you know, the surplus of new moves makes, the surplus of new moves really makes a radical difference, and it really facilitates the whole process for me, and it was too perfect of an opportunity for me not to seize it. Because, you know, when you have so much material to work with, creating a Storm moveset becomes a walk in the park. But yeah, like, his DMC5 moveset is nothing short of astounding, but then again, being cool is, you know, like, par for the course for Vergil, so, you know. So to no one's surprise, his moveset is predominantly comprised of sword attacks, which is kind of a given since he's the sword user. And of course, since, you know, Vergil obviously doesn't struggle in the speed department, it comes as no surprise that Vergil's gameplay also places a premium on speed and power, because, you know, like, he's like power incarnate, and all his actions are predicated on his pursuit of power, and he's the epitome of power, and you already know. So, you know, his hallmark is also speed. Like, that's the name of the game. Well, I mean, actually, the name of the game is DMC5, but yeah. But yeah, anyway, I've rambled on long enough, so without further ado, let's go. So for starters, we got Vergil's character icon, and there's not really a lot to say about this. It's just his, you know, in-game render. So, yeah. His alternative costume is basically the same alternative costume that he has in DMC5. You know, his blue coat. Well, you know, the one with the one that looks more like his DMC3 version. So, yeah. His character select animation is his Bloody Palace taunt, you know, the stance he does with the sword. That kind of reminds me of Raiden's stance, you know, like the thing that he does with his sword when you load the game. When you load Metal Gear Rising, you'll see Raiden holding his sword like that. Well, kind of. But it also reminds me, to an extent, it ever so slightly reminds me of Road to Boruto Sasuke's character select animation, so yeah. His stance, there's really not much to say about his stance. It's just him standing and holding his Yamato. So, yeah. His idle animation is just, you know, him with his arms crossed, and it kind of reminds me of Sage Naruto's regular stance and of Dante's idle animation. So, because, you know, they all have their arms crossed. So, yeah. His armor break is basically him without the coat. So, you know, he's just coatless. You just see this vest that he's wearing underneath. I don't really know what this is, but yeah. Now, as for his introduction animations, I'm not really gonna say anything. I'm just gonna play them. Basically, they're just his taunts, and I changed some voices and stuff, but you get the point. So these are his intros.
You think you stand a chance? Let's have some fun. Shall we begin? Show me your motivation.
As for his chakra charge, I really don't know. As you can see, I used the Beowulf Try Me taunt and combined it with Accumulate, where he amasses his send all trigger energy, but I really don't know what this reminds me of. I can't find a storm equivalent for this, so yeah. Moving on, we've got his substitution, which is basically trick, or well, air trick, and it reminds me of Shisui and Dante. You know, because Dante has air trick, or well, trick as a sub, and Shisui does this like flicker thingy that it's like this teleport thingy that really it just resembles Vergil substitution, so yeah, or well, the other way around. Now, his guard is basically just him holding the Yamato sheathed, and it reminds me of Heavy Sasuke's guard, obviously, so. His double jump is just him jumping and using air trick. Yeah, that's it. His ninja move is, for some reason, similar to Shisui. Not really, but that's the only thing I can think of. His shuriken is, basically the same. Well, it's not really the same, but it kind of reminds me of Rinnegan Sasuke's shuriken and Haku's shuriken, because it's pointy, you know, like Haku throws these needles, and they're blue, I mean, because they're, you know, you got chakra, and Rinnegan Sasuke throws these flame control arrow thingies. I'm not really sure what they are, but yeah, like Vergil Shuriken it's basically the Mirage blades, you know, the summoned swords. So that's basically what he uses. As for Vergil's combo startup, it's very similar to Dante in that he uses both his gauntlets and his sword. Like, the startup goes as follows. First two hits of Beowulf combo A, or combo B because it's the same, followed by the first four hits of the Yamato combo A or combo C because, you know, it's the same. So, you know, you got two Beowulf hits followed by four Yamato hits, and that's basically that's a startup. And Dante has a similar thing, you know, like he has two hits with the Balrog, and then he uses the Million Stab and all that, so you get the point. And now we finally get to start talking about the actual combos. So we've got his neutral combo called Rapid Judgment Cut, and the reason why I called it this is because, well, you got Rapid Slash. So basically, after executing the combo startup, Vergil does the Slash Barrage of the Yamato combo C. You could look at it like this, like he does two hits with the Beowulf, and then he just executes the entire Yamato combo C, except he doesn't do the last hit, instead he does Rapid Slash, and he, you know, slashes, he blitzes the opponent, and follows it up with 3 Judgment Cuts. So that's why I called it, you know, like, Rapid Judgment Cut. And to an extent, this reminds me of Dante's Million Stab, because, you know, it's like a barrage of sword slashes in a way, except with Dante, it's basically stabs, but here it's just some random slashes. But it also reminds me, by extension, of Mifune's neutral combo, where he also does this Million Stab kind of thing. And it also reminds me of Storm 3 MS Sasuke's neutral combo, like, the final hit, it's the same thing. Like, it's not really Rapid Slash, but, you know, Sasuke blitzes the opponent, he literally slashes through them, and then he uses Amaterasu, except here, Vergil, you know, slashes through the opponent and then uses 3 Judgment Cuts, so that's about it. Vergil's down combo is called Double Aerial Cleave, and it's basically just, you know, after executing the combo startup, Vergil follows it up with the Mirage Edge Million Stab, and then with the final hit for the Mirage Edge combo B, like this sword pirouette. After this, the Storm Blades launch the opponent into the air, and this is when the cinematic starts. Like, Vergil teleports the opponent into the air, and basically he summons his doppelganger, and they both pin the opponent to the ground with Aerial Cleave, which is, like, you know, hence the name, Double Aerial Cleave. And this really reminds me of Dante's Million Stab, even more so than, you know, the previous combo, because, you know, Vergil basically impales his opponent. Well, he doesn't exactly impale them, he just swiftly stabs them continuously in this hectic barrage of stabs, which is literally identical to how Dante does his Million Stab. I mean, it's, you know, it's the same move, basically. And it reminds me of Mifune's neutral combo. This is literally the same thing, you know, the Million Stab thing. And it also reminds me of Kimimara's Awakening, because this pirouette, this spin that Vergil does with his sword, kind of reminds me of how Kimimaro in his Awakening, he basically, flips just like this. And Dante in his Double Trigger Awakening, he basically flips in the same way with Revolver. That's what I did for Dante's moveset. Dante's Awakening combo startup ends, with the Revolver. So this is kind of the same thing in a way. It also reminds me of pretty much any drop down combo from Storm, which is basically almost, well, not every down combo, but a lot of down combos like, Zetsu, Obito, and all that. Now we've got the right side combo. Now, the right side combo is called Mirage Overdrive because it's basically the Mirage Edge combo A. You do the startup, then Vergil does the Mirage Edge combo A, and then he does Overdrive with the Mirage Edge. Now, this, he basically, I'm not quite sure how to put this, but this kind of reminds me of Zabuza's neutral combo, because Zabuza does the same thing. He swings his sword in the same way that Vergil swings his Mirage Edge, and it's literally the same thing I did for Dante's DT startup for his Hypothetical Storm moveset. And next up, you've got the Mirage Overdrive, which kind of reminds me of Dante's DT left side combo, because he finishes it with Overdrive. It's the same move, except that, the animation is slightly different, but you get the point. It's still, the gist is the same. So yeah, kind of reminds me of Zabuza's neutral combo, and which is like basically Dante's DT startup, and also Dante's DT left side combo because of Overdrive. As for his left side combo, and this is kind of problematic, it's called Deep Stinger, and it's because, well, he finishes the combo with Deep Stinger, but the combo you see in the Hypothetical Storm moveset video is actually kind of bad, and I decided to change it. So, after doing the combo startup, Vergil uses the final hit of his Beowulf Sin Double Trigger combo A. The kick he does? So yeah, after the combo startup, he just does this kick, and then he does Deep Stinger, and that's it. And, in the original video, Vergil does, like, the final hit for his Beowulf combo B, then the final hit for his Sin Double Trigger Beowulf combo A, then he uses Trig down and uses his Blistering Blades, and then he goes Deep Stinger, and it's really problematic, and it really looks dumb. So I decided to change it now. It's just one hit and Deep Stinger, and I mean, really, there's nothing left to say. The combo itself really reminds me of Kiba's neutral combo and Kinshiki's up combo, because they especially Kiba's neutral combo, because he literally drills the opponent just like this. So it would be a part of the combo, and then it would continue into cinematic, just like with Kiba. So, yeah. Next up, we've got Vergil's up combo, which is Rising Star. And, basically, after doing the combo startup, Vergil uses the third hit for his Beowulf combo B, which is this Kick Barrage. Then he uses a Lunar Phase, and after using Lunar Phase, he uses the Rising Star with his Yamato. And really, it kind of reminds me of Ukon or Sakon's Kick Barrage in their combo that they have in their, like, combo startup, I think, because, it's literally the same thing. And again, it kind of reminds me of Dante's Revolver and Kimimaro's Awakening combo startup, this thing he does, like the spin with his tail, because of the Lunar Phase. So, next up we got his air combo, which is Aerial Rave, and it's basically his Aerial Rave 2, actually, but, And honestly, his air combo reminds me of Sugetsu's Awakening air combo, because he has this roulette spin kind of thing he does with his sword in midair, so that's what it reminds me of to an extent, so yeah. As for his grab, it's called Vertiginous Blitz, and I genuinely have no idea what this reminds me of. So Vergil, basically, he just uses his Mirage Edge round trip move, and then he uses Rapid Slash to basically blitz the opponent, and then he uses Blistering Blades before he actually sheathes his Yamato. And yeah, I mean, it's called vertiginous blitz because, he blitzes the opponent that's like, I don't know, experiencing some kind of vertigo because he's being, like, you get the point. Like, next up, we got his first tilt. For his first tilt is called Void Slash, and that's basically what it is, Void Slash. Kind of reminds me of Nagato's tilt, or maybe better yet, like Hidan's tilt, because, they do the same thing with basically pulling the opponent towards them. Guess it kind of looks like Danzo's tilt, like the air thingy, to some degree, but it doesn't have the same effect as Danzo's tilt, so yeah. His second tilt is Trick, or well, the air trick. I don't really know. You know the trick where he basically ejects, throws a summon sword at his opponent, and then he teleports to that sword, the summon sword. It kind of reminds me of I would say it's exactly like Dante's second tilt, which is also trick, or well, air trick, but the thing is, Vergil actually throws a sword, so if the opponent guards, he won't be able to teleport. It works exactly like Minato's tilt with the Flying Raijin. He throws his kunai at the opponent, and if it connects, he teleports to the kunai and starts hitting the opponent. It also reminds me of Bijou Naruto's tilt or Six Paths Madara's tilt, but it's definitely identical to Minato's. So, yeah, almost. His first jutsu is basically Judgment Cut. There's really nothing left to say. You can do it once or twice or thrice. You can do it in the air as well. Kind of reminds me of Hinata's air palm jutsu, like doing multiple air palms up to 3. She can also do them in midair, so there's that. And I guess kind of like Mu's jutsu in that it's like, it doesn't. I don't really know why it reminds me of Mu's jutsu. Maybe because it's like, from done from some kind of distance, but it really doesn't make sense. Yeah, it's most reminiscent of Hinata's jutsu. His second jutsu is Overdrive, and need I say more? It's basically just Overdrive. It reminds me of Mitsuki's jutsu, of Shisui's jutsu, and of Dante's jutsu, which is also Overdrive. So, yeah. Moving on, we've got his Awakening Charge, which is Accumulate, just like with Dante's Sin DT Charge. And it kind of reminds me of Hokage Naruto's Awakening, because, when he charges his chakra for his Awakening, you can see him already going into his QB chakra mode, and you can see Vergil's Sindel trigger shadow flicker over him as he's charging for his Awakening. So, yeah. You thought that was it? Oh, we haven't even scratched the surface yet. Like, this ain't even the tip of the iceberg. Now comes Vergil's Awakening. And when he goes into his Awakening, his opponents are in for a rude awakening when they find out that they have another thing coming, and they get to meet their maker. Okay, this isn't funny. But anyway, his awakening is his Sin Double Trigger, accompanied by his doppelgangers. So, Vergil unleashes the demonic power that resides within him. And, I really gotta expound on this. So, believe it or not, originally, Vergil's Awakening was going to be a carbon copy of his base moveset. I felt as though I'd run out of things to give Vergil, and I didn't really know how to make use of his ultimates and his doppelganger. I even planned on making a weird awakening in which his doppelganger would just, like, assist him, like accompany his every move, but I quickly gave up on that idea because, the doppelganger can only use the Yamato. And I was also really aggravated by the fact that I just didn't know how to shoehorn his doppelganger into his moveset and make better use of him, excluding his down combo. So, I was really oscillating between making Vergil's Awakening the same as his base form moveset, and, coming up with an entirely new moveset. Like, with DMC4, I can say with a high degree of certainty that it would have been the former. Like, I would have left his base moveset as his Awakening, and I would have just called it a day. I like making the Awakening just a skin. But that's because I would have literally used all of his moves in his base moveset. I wouldn't even have to break a sweat. Whereas with DMC5 Vergil, I have all these ultimates. I had a lot of combo finishers, like the Yamato Combo A. I have the Doppelganger. I had a lot of, unused abilities that I somehow had to put to good use. and it was really a major pain in the posterior. Now, with DMC4 Vergil, the lack of ultimates would have been an extenuating circumstance, providing me with an excuse for basically not incorporating them into his awakening. But the ultimates in DMC5 are simply too important for me to leave out, so that kind of encumbered things. So I was like, like, no siree, no way, fat chance, we're not leaving his base moveset, we're making a brand new one. And believe me when I tell you, his doppelganger is no mere accessory. After all, it is a pivotal mechanic in the game, and just as it's instrumental to Vergil in terms of combat, it's also instrumental to me in that it gives me a lot more leeway to do what I want, and then some. Now, needless to say, Vergil's speed and damage are substantially enhanced in his awakening, which is kind of the point of awakenings. So in DMC5, when he enters his SNDT, he becomes, exponentially more powerful, and his attack potency increases, and though at the expense of his SDT gauge. So, I had to make something that will reflect that power. But, of course, without the vitality replenishing part, because that'd be an insane thing to have in Storm. If we're gonna be realistic. So Vergil's Awakening Dash is basically his trick teleport, and it's really, he leaves these after images. It's really reminiscent of Dante's Sin Double Trigger Advent Dash, the same after image teleport kind of thing. And it really reminds me of A and Minato's Awakening Dash, because they just immediately appear, in front of their opponent, and they basically teleport when dashing. So, yeah, it's not exactly the same, but kinda. As for his DT Ninja move, I don't know. It's the same as Shisui, I guess. Not really, but, it's a little different, because, he does this slide, and then he dodges, It's not the same as his regular ninja moves, so, yeah. His shuriken is the same as in his base form, the Mirage Blades, and that's about it. So his Awakening startup is basically the first two hits of his Mirage Edge combo A, or combo B, doesn't really matter, it's the same, followed by the third hit of his Beowulf combo B, the Kick Barrage, the same thing he uses in his up combo, followed by the final hit of his SDT Yamato combo B. This hit where he just, does this thing with the Yamato. He drops down with his sword. I'm not quite sure how to describe it, but yeah. So yeah, first he slashes you twice with the Mirage Edge, then he does this Kick Barrage with Beowulf, and then he does this drop down slash with the Yamato. So that's basically his combo startup for his awakening. Oh right, and the last hit, Vergil's last hit in his combo startup for his awakening, with this Yamato flip or whatever you want to call it, it really reminds me of Rinnegan Sasuke's last hit in his combo startup when he flips over his opponent basically. For some reason the animation, like the movement, the motion seems similar to that in a way, so yeah. So for his neutral combo, which is called Judgment Cut End, I try to basically reenact Six Paths Madara's grab, with the Limbo clones, where Madara and his Limbo clones simultaneously, they just go on this spree, like this streak, they blitz the opponent consecutively. So Vergil does the same thing here. He blitzes the opponent in tandem with his doppelganger, and they do these rapid slashes in sync, and that's it. So after executing the combo startup, Vergil and his doppelganger basically slash through the opponent with rapid slash 6 times, and then Vergil finishes it off with Judgment Cut End basically, and yeah, and that's it. And this kind of it low-key reminds me of, well, like I said, it reminds me of Six Paths Madara's grab, but it also reminds me of Adult Sasuke's neutral combo finisher, with where he just goes on this spree basically and ends it off with the Amaterasu. And it also reminds me of Minato's Awakening Jutsu, because, he has this jutsu where he just teleports all over the place, which is really similar to, Vergil's Judgment Cut End. Now, his Sin Double Trigger down combo, or his Awakening down combo, is kind of annoying to explain, but whatever. Okay, so After executing the combo startup, Vergil punches his opponent with his Beowulf once, then side rolls to the left and punches them again, then side rolls to the right and punches them again, like a total of 3 Beowulf punches. Then he follows it up with the last hit of Beowulf combo A, or well, the last 2 hits. It's barely noticeable, and then he follows it up with the last hit of his Sin Double Trigger Beowulf combo B. Basically, this Tetsuzanko where he spreads his wings and hits the opponent. And after this, he follows it up. He finishes it off with Hell on Earth. So basically, like Vergil, he punches the ground with inexorable force, pulverizing his opponent, like crushing everything into smithereens. I mean, Hell on Earth is just an attack of insane magnitude. It could work as an up combo, like, Vergil punching the ground and lifting the opponent up, but yeah, so. Anyway, this kind of reminds me of, I'm not sure, like, it low-key reminds me of Storm 1 Kabuto's combo, like the neutral combo, because he does the same thing, like these side rolls and punches and all that. It also reminds me of Dante's DT up combo that I created. Like where Dante, he just basically punches his opponent with the Balrog and he goes left and then right and all that. So that's really the same thing. The thing that inspired me to do the same thing for Vergil's DT down combo. It also reminds me of Storm 3 and Misaski's Flame Control Sword Ultimate Jutsu, simply because of the explosion. It kind of looks similar. Also reminds me of Dante's Sin Double Trigger down combo, because, Sin Inferno is basically the same thing as Hell on Earth. I mean, Hell, Inferno, all that. And yeah, I even thought of making a new move, changing Dante's Sin Double Trigger neutral combo to this, where he just, uses Umbra like this and teleports. So yeah, as you can see, there are a lot of similarities between Vergil's down combo, especially these Beowulf punches, and a lot of the other things that I just mentioned. So yeah. Oh, and it's kind of similar to like Tsunade's ultimate, and you can see why. So yeah. Moving on, we've got his DT right side combo, and it's called Spectral Pirouette. He basically uses his Yamato in conjunction with his Mirage Edge, and it's really exquisite. Like, after executing the combo startup, Vergil basically uses his Mirage Edge combo B, but without the first 6 hits. You know what I mean. He just does these insane slashes, and he ends it off with this spin. The same spin that he uses in his base form down combo. Yeah, that spin. And really, that kind of reminds me of Han's down combo for some reason. I mean, I really can't think of anything else, so yeah, I guess it's only Han, the only character that really has anything that's like a spin, if that makes any sense. So I called it Spectral Pirouette because it's like a pirouette, and like spectral because the Mirage Edge is kind of, well, spectral. So yeah. His left side combo is called Eviscerating Slash, and basically, for his left side combo, he after doing the combo startup, he uses the 5th hit of his Yamato combo C, and he follows it up with the last 3 hits for his Sin Double Trigger Yamato combo A. So these 3 slashes that he has. And yeah, basically that's it. It's kind of reminiscent of Sin Double Trigger Dante's down combo, the 3-hit combo. It's got the similar effect. Also reminds me of Dante's neutral combo, Dance Macabre. You've also got these 3 hits, and then it's just one big finishing slash. And yeah, that's basically what it reminds me of. But it's called Eviscerating Slash, obviously, because it's like it eviscerates the opponent, if that makes any sense. But yeah, I mean, you've got a lot of characters in Storm that have a similar kind of, you got Daru, you've got Samehada B, you've got Kakashi, you've got Ime Sasuke, you got a lot of characters that just end their combos with slashes. So yeah. Finally, we got his, well, not finally, we still got more, but we've also got his Awakening Up combo, which is called Rising Sun, and it's basically just Vergil's Kick 13 in his Sin Double Trigger, because it has more hits. and he finishes it off with Rising Sun, because that's what this move is called in DMC3. And I don't really know. It really reminds me of Dante's Grab, which is like Pyromania plus Updraft plus Firestorm. It really reminds me of all that. I can't really find a Storm equivalent, but I'm sure there are Storm equivalents for this move. So finally, we got his DT or well SDT air combo, which is called Lunar Phase. The startup is basically the same as his base form. It's just Aerial Rave 2, but instead of finishing it with the final slash, he finishes it off with the Lunar Phase. And it kind of reminds me of Dante's DT neutral air combo with the revolvers and all that. And I don't know, it kind of reminds me of, you know, of Bees, of Storm 2 Bees air combo, because he also finishes it off with a kick. So, yeah. Next up, we've got his grab, his awakening grab, which is called Collissive Barrage. Vergil basically grabs his opponent by slashing them with the Yamato. Well, the doppelganger slashes the opponent with the Yamato, and then Vergil and his doppelganger use the fifth hit of the Yamato combo C in tandem, and they collide. Basically, they just from both sides they keep slashing the opponent. So yeah, that's basically his grab. It reminds me of Six Paths Madara's grab. Again, I don't know why. I guess it's because this collision thingy. I'm not quite sure, but yeah. And we've also got two tilts. His first awakening tilt is his Dragon Breaker. And this is, it starts off, it's not solely his Dragon Breaker alone. He starts this tilt with the final hit of his Beowulf combo B, the one where he punches the opponent. So he basically dashes at the opponent with this punch, and then he punches him into the air 3 times. That's basically what this tilt is. And it kind of reminds me of Kimimaro. Like, Kimimaro also has this thing, like, he has this interactive tilt, if that makes any sense. It doesn't really make a lot of sense, but you can do it 1 time, you can do it 2 times, you can, the more you mash, if you mash 3 times, if you press the attack button 3 times, you will execute the entire tilt, which is basically how Vergil's tilt works. Also reminds me of Dante's Awakening Tilt 2, Heavy Jolt, because he also dashes at you, except Dante doesn't continue punching you into the air, whereas Vergil does. Also reminds me of Dante's up combo, Rising Dragon. And it reminds me of Sakura's tilt, because it's literally the same thing. She dashes at you with her punch. And it also reminds me of Sakura's up combo, which is basically the same thing. She punches you twice into the air with this uppercut. So, you got a lot of Storm characters that use uppercuts either as up combos or tilts, or you get the point. So there are a lot of things that really remind me of this. We've got his second tilt, which is called Penetrative Mirage, and it's basically just Deep Stinger. It reminds me of PTS Sasuke's Awakening tilt, or Dante's Sindel Trigger tilt. There are a lot of characters that have stuff like this. You got Sasori, you've got Kisame in his Awakening. Just got a lot of characters that have this thing. And, yeah. His Awakening Jutsu, he has 2 jutsus. The first one is this quadruple Judgment Cut, where he and his doppelganger, they just basically do 4 Judgment Cuts. And it reminds me again of Hinata's Jutsu, the Air Palm. Also reminds me of Ward Toby's Awakening action, his triple Fireball Jutsu, basically. Yeah, basically. Finally, we've got his second jutsu, which is Round Trip. It kind of reminds me of Dante's DT Awakening Action 4, because, he has round trips. And it also reminds me of Hanabi's jutsu. It kind of has the same effect. Now we've got Vergil's first awakening action called Spiral Blades. So this awakening action lasts for approximately 10 seconds, roughly, and it can only be used once per awakening, because I feel like it's a little bit too OP. So Vergil basically surrounds himself with these, like summoned swords or mirage blades or whatever you want to call them. He conjures these blades that basically hit everything in his proximity And, by everything I mean his opponents. So it's got three uses. Now, first off, while this awakening action is in effect, Vergil can dash towards the opponent, and upon coming into contact with the opponent, the swords will start to spin faster, thus damaging the opponent. Like they would act like basically it'd be the same as Hinata's protective 8 trigram 64 palms jutsu. So after damaging the opponent, they would immediately disappear. So that's the first thing. Like, you can dash towards the opponent, and if your opponent doesn't guard, they will damage him and disappear. So the second use is that, while this awakening action is active, Vergil is technically immune to regular hits and combos. And, that means that if the opponent tries to close in and hit Vergil with a combo, the swords will start to spin faster and they'll damage the opponent. The same way they would damage them if Vergil just dashed towards them, and it can. So that's basically the thing. And finally, even though Vergil is immune to regular attacks and projectiles, well, this awakening action is in effect if the opponent fires a projectile jutsu, like a fireball, for example, and Vergil fails to dodge, the swords will act like a shield and they'll nullify the effects of the jutsu, but they would immediately disappear after this. So, like, if there's, I don't know, Danzo's jutsu, for example, or the last Sasuke's fireball jutsu, or Hashirama Shuriken Jutsu. If you fail to dodge, these blades got your back, basically. They will, tank this attack, but they'll disappear immediately. So, yeah. And like I said, it kind of reminds me of, Hinata's Jutsu, but it's also really similar to Dante's, Crimson Barrier, or well, Man in the Red Awakening action, because it literally works the same way. The orbs spin faster, then they just, it's kind of similar but not identical. So yeah. The second awakening action is Stormblades, and basically the summon swords surround the opponent, and then they launch them into the air after 3 seconds. However, if the opponent chakra dashes or air chakra dashes, the swords will just disappear. And you can just guard, and they just won't launch you if you're guarding. So yeah. The third awakening action is basically just, blistering blades. And I don't really have anything to say about this. It kind of reminds me of Dante's DT Awakening action, the Magic Hat one, with the Foss hat, where it shoots all these red orbs. And by extension, it reminds me of, Konohamaru's Awakening action with the Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu, to an extent only, but yeah. And finally, we've got the fourth and final awakening action, which is basically the Heavy Rain Blades. So the swords, or the blades, they hover over the opponent for 1 second. And in this 1 second, it's kind of like ample time to dodge, unless, the opponent is somehow busy with something. And if they fail to dodge, and, these blades will simply hit them, and the opponent will be stunned, like frozen in time, for approximately 3 to 4 seconds. It will be just like the guard break pill in a way. So yeah. Oh, and this awakening action kind of reminds me of Guy's a Gates Awakening grab, or well, guard break, because time is slowed down when he does that guard break, or well, grab. And it also kind of reminds me of Sugetsu's Water Dragon Awakening action. You know what I mean? Like when the Water Dragon just drops from midair. And, yeah. Now for Vergil's ultimate. Sheesh. Like, I was dead set on making something absolutely majestic and apocalyptical, Like, this was by far the most grueling, arduous task. Like, how with Dante, I basically had to make 2 ultimates? Like, the reason for this was very simple. He has Demolition, and he has Judgment, and both of these are finishers, having both of them in the same ultimate was basically not feasible. It was undoable from my point of view, so I decided to make 2 ultimates for Dante. Like, one where he finishes the whole thing with Judgment, and one where he finishes it with Demolition. And it also only made sense to do this, since Dante technically has, 3 movesets, and given the amount of things he has at his disposal, by no stretch of the imagination is it unreasonable to give him 2 ultimates. However, Vergil has three ultimates in the game: Deep Stinger, Hell on Earth, and Judgment Cut End. And I wanted to somehow incorporate all three of these ultimates into one ultimate jutsu, but I was basically faced with the same problem as with Dante. Both Hell on Earth and Judgment Cut End are simply too finishy, if that makes any sense. I don't see how I could use Hell on Earth and then follow it up with Judgment or vice versa. I mean, Judgment Cut End. So I was in this predicament, and I thought that I would simply make this ultimate where Vergil starts it up with Rapid Slash, and then he summons his doppelganger, which uses Deep Stinger and Hell on Earth, and then Vergil somehow uses Judgment Cut End. It would have been a clusterfuck, but I was content with this, as stupidly extravagant and overbearing as it may have originally been. But I felt like there was something lackluster about that. I needed to make an ultimate that will be more balanced, that will be a testament to Vergil's immense power. Now, I wanted to make something that would really emphasize his speed and agility, something on a gargantuan scale, like the most perverted display of power. And I also had to make sure to find a way to make good use of his doppelganger and his Sindel trigger. But then I got motivated. I had this epiphany, this incredible idea. So since Vergil can use his ultimates in his base form without really having to resort to using his Sindel trigger, I felt like it'd be a great idea to make Deep Stinger his ultimate jutsu startup. And this is very similar to Kiba's ultimate jutsu startup and Fu's UJ startup, so. So for his ultimate jutsu, basically, Vergil pulls out his Yamato and his Mirage Edge, and he basically does Deep Stinger. He unleashes this cyclonic barrage of whatever you want to call it, like this spinning barrage of hits or slashes. So he does Deep Stinger, and then he follows this up with Yamato's Rising Star, launching the opponent into the air. And then he does, Aerial Rave 2, and follows this up with Lunar Phase. And once he pins the opponent to the ground with Lunar Phase, the Storm Blades, they basically launch the opponent into the air again. And then as soon as this happens, and while the opponent is airborne, the Heavy Rain Blades, drop, they basically fall on the opponent, freezing them in midair. So while the opponent is frozen in midair, Vergil once again pulls out his Mirage Edge, and he does Round Trip, basically placing the Mirage Edge right underneath the opponent that is frozen in midair because of the Heavy Rain Blades. And basically, the opponent, he eventually gets unfrozen, and they fall directly onto the Mirage Edge that is spinning. And as this is happening, Vergil goes into a Sindel trigger, and he summons his doppelganger. And basically his doppelganger teleports to the opponent that is still being basically sliced up by the spinning Mirage Edge. And the doppelganger charges Hell on Earth with Beowulf. And while the doppelganger is doing that, the actual Vergil is, he charges up Judgment Cut End. And just, as soon as the doppelganger is about to actually hit the ground with, Beowulf, Vergil does Judgment Cut End, and he slashes everything around him. And basically, as soon as Vergil sheathes his sword, both the effects of Judgment Cut End and the delayed effects of the explosion from Hell on Earth take effect, resulting in this huge explosion behind Vergil. And, you see these glass particles and all that. It would just look really cool. I think I did a somewhat good job, demonstrating this here. The split screen and all that, that's how it would look, more or less. So yeah, that's basically his ultimate. I really think this might just be the best ultimate I've made, because it really just makes use of everything that Vergil has at his disposal. Like, I'm not quite sure what to say. Like, I mean, basically, I don't know how long this ultimate will be. Maybe even longer than 30 seconds. Like, if this calamity befalls you, you can go fuck yourself immediately. And obviously, it's called Infernal Judgment Cut because, Hell on Earth plus Judgment Cut End, and Hell equals Inferno. So, I was originally going to call it Infernal Mayhem or Infernal Disarray, but I figured this was more on point. So, yeah. And honestly, if you ask me what this reminds me of, I would have to say, like, it reminds me of a lot of things. So, First of all, it reminds me of Mifune's ultimate jutsu. You know, Judgment Cut End and Mifune's ultimate jutsu. It's kind of the same thing, not really, but you know, like Vergil basically sheathes his sword and this explosion occurs behind him, and Mifune basically does the same exact thing. And then again, you've got you've got Deep Stinger, which, like I said, it kind of reminds me of Kiba's Ultimate Jutsu, and maybe Fu's Ultimate Jutsu. The explosion from Hell on Earth, it's kind of the same as Storm 3 and Masasuke's Ultimate Jutsu, with the Flame Control Sword. Then again, you've got and the heavy rain blades falling on the opponent. It kind of reminds me of EMS Sasuke's second ultimate jutsu. With the flame control sword. No, and with the flame control, Susanoo flame control, basically. When the arrows start falling from the sky. That's exactly how this would look like, except instead of arrows, you'd have these mirage blades falling, and it also kind of reminds me of Dante's ultimate jutsus. Like, I don't even know how to say this, but like Dante's ultimate jutsu one, with the judgment. You can't deny that Judgment and Judgment Cut End are like they both involve some kind of like they both stop time in a way or space. They alter it in a way. You've got these slashes and they like Dante's judgment results in an explosion which is very similar to like Hell on Earth. And not only that, but Vergil uses his round trip move to basically, and the opponent gets slashed, sliced up by the spinning Mirage Edge. But Dante and his, ultimate, he uses the round trips, and these round trips basically cut the opponent in midair. And instead of the heavy rain blades falling, Dante summons meteors that fall on the opponent, which is being cut by these round trips, which are like circular summon swords. And yeah, I mean, there are a lot of things, a lot of these parallels that I've noticed. I mean, I did kind of try to base Vergil's ultimate kind of on Dante's, and they do have a lot of similar moves, undeniably. So, yeah, and also you've got the Sin DT transformation. Both Dante and Vergil, they both, go into their Sin DT form, and it's basically, yeah, it's basically how it is. So, yeah. Also, unlike Dante, where I mostly had to resort to photo mode screenshots, illustrating or well demonstrating Virgil's ultimate in game, like in the Void, was surprisingly easy. It was cakewalk. Like you can pretty much tell exactly how the ultimate would look like if it was in Storm, even without the screenshots. Like I said, I included certain things for Vergil that I didn't include for Dante, and one of those things is the ultimate jutsu finishers. Basically, he's got four of them. This is what they would look and sound like. So, yeah.
I shall surpass Sparta. My power shall be absolute. Now you meet your end. Rest in peace.
He's also got support quotes, multiple quotes, and these support quotes are basically, a support quote is something a character says when they're available to be called. Like when the support gauge fills up, this is what Vergil would say. A lot of characters, they say stuff like, call me, or I'm ready, or, something like that. So this would be Vergil's support quote, or, well, quotes.
Stand aside.
He's also got some switch quotes. These are basically things that characters say when you switch to them, like my turn or Master Boruto is ready for this or something like that.
Let's have some fun. Now you meet your end.
The awakening quote is something that a character says when the awakening gauge fills up, when it becomes available, like like time to show you the power of the Uchiha, or I gotta get serious, or you're really stubborn, or something like that. So these will be Vergil's awakening quotes, and he's got quite a lot of them.
Don't get cocky. Fine. I suppose this is how you wish to die. Getting on my nerves. Let's end this. Not bad. Thank you for that. Now I shall give you death in return. Your nightmare begins here.
Also, there's this defeat quote. Certain characters say stuff like "not," like impossible, or "not here," or "the will of fire is indestructible," something like inextinguishable, something like that. It hears and says that when he gets defeated. So this would be Vergil's defeat quote, or well, quotes.
How could I lose? Ridiculous.
And finally, we've got victory animations. So in Storm, when a character wins, they have this animation and they say some things. Like, usually they got 6 to 7 quotes that they use. But for Vergil, he would have multiple, victory animations and multiple quotes as well. So, yeah, we're kind of, this isn't typical of Storm, because in Storm you've only got one animation per character. But, like I said, I'm not going to strictly adhere to the Storm formula. I'm not going to do that. So, yeah, this kind of makes sense.
You're wasting my time. There's no time for doubt. I know what must be done. Jackpot. Good night. This is the power of Sparta. Is that all? How boring.
And that's the ball game. I don't think there's anything left to add regarding Vergil and his moveset. Nothing left to summarize, basically. Like I said, I simply felt like I had to make a moveset fitting for a character of his caliber, and I really didn't want to settle for some half-hearted attempt at making a moveset. So, all in all, I'm content with the final product. I mean, like I said, I made the Hypothetical Storm moveset for Vergil, almost 6 months ago, and I know it's kind of weird to make this analysis video this late in the game, but cut me some slack, will ya? I don't even know what I'm doing. And, what can I even say, bro? DMC5 is just the gift that keeps on giving. They obviously decided to capitalize on the fact that everyone wanted Vergil, and they knew it'd be a very easy way to rake in cash, so, Now, anyway, I have a lot more plans. I have more plans with regard to this quote-unquote series. I have 2 more movesets that I want to make. The first is Bayonetta, and the second one is Delsin from Infamous Second Son. Now, for Delsin, I saw his entire moveset on YouTube, and going by that, I devised a moveset for him. I know exactly what his down combo would be, what his up combo would be, what his ultimate would be. You get the point. Problem is, I don't really have a PS4 or PS5, and Infamous is a PlayStation exclusive, so unless it comes to PC, I don't see how I can actually realize his moveset, if that makes any sense. And I don't really plan on getting a PS5 now, or anytime soon. I might have a change of heart down the line, but I kind of doubt it in all honesty, so... Bayonetta, on the other hand, is a different story. I played and finished Bayonetta in March, and I recorded most of her moves. Not all, because there are some combos that I simply cannot execute for some reason, but I hope I'll fix that. And she's got a lot of things, swords, guns, you name it. She has bazookas, nunchuck guns, a katana, a whip, gauntlets, and greaves made of fire and lightning, a weapon that has 20 forms, axe, bow and arrow, mace, spear, sword, all that jazz. Now, at first glance, it seems easy, but frankly, making a moveset for her is really doing a number on me. It's taking a toll on me physically, because she has so many combos, and none of them actually serve a specific purpose. In DMC, you've got both quantity and quality, but here it's just so... I can't really explain it. I'm not saying these moves have no quality. It's just I feel it requires me to make 10 different movesets for this one character, and that's not something I'm really euphoric about. But still, she has a wide array of things at her disposal, and that's reason enough for me to make a moveset for her. And it's kind of funny, because having, having an excess, a surplus of moves to work with is usually a good thing. because it makes it easier to make a moveset, but that just isn't the case with Bayo. Like, I don't know when I'll make the moveset for her. Like, I feel kind of burnt out, and I don't want this channel to be reduced to just, me making hypothetical storm movesets. And part of me really wants to get a move on, get it over with, even though I'm ultimately enjoying my time making these. But, I definitely will make a moveset for her. There's no telling when I'll make it, but, all in due time. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. I'd be most liable to presume, like, in about 5 years or so. The saddest part is I'm pretty sure I'm not that far off the mark. In fact, I'm willing to bet I might be right on the money with that one, given how I started making a Sasuke versus Dante death battle video in August 2019, and 2 years later it's still not done. And I reckon it won't be done anytime soon. So it really goes on to show how industrious I am about this whole thing, and yeah, I guess this was like a segue for what's coming, which is the topic of my upload schedule. Anyway, my upload schedule is in complete shambles, and I have a lot, and I mean a lot, of video ideas. And some of my videos have been in the making for like 2 years. I finished the audio for two of my videos in 2019, but I've yet to actually start editing and making the videos. Like, I think it should be like 10 videos if I'm lowballing, 16 if I'm highballing it. I don't really know. I don't know if I should, like, I should really ramp up the video uploads, but, I don't want to get ahead of myself, so I really want to upload on a more regular basis, but my laziness is absolutely debilitating. Like, I only have one exam left for September, which is actually right around the corner if you think about it. Like, I passed 6 exams in June, and I feel incredibly exhausted still. I guess it was kind of presumptuous of me to think that I'd be magically hitting on all cylinders as soon as I was done with my exams, but yeah, that's about the size of it. Hope you enjoyed the video. Like, comment, subscribe, and as per usual. So yeah, see ya, peace out, and have a good one.
Show me your motivation.